Here's Ray Comfort to do his goofy shtick about hell.
This is your eternity. This isn't just who you're going to marry or what you're going to do for a job. This is where you're going to spend forever. There's a bee on me? Do you want to hit it?
Yeah, if I saw a bee on Ray Comfort, I'd want to leave it there too.
Do you think there's a heaven and a hell?
No.
You got no hope in your death? You're just waiting for death to come?
Yeah, I want to see what happens. I don't think it's possible to know.
Do you believe in God?
No.
So you're an atheist?
Yes.
Why?
I don't think there's enough proof to say that there is a God.
If I gave you proof, would you change your mind?
Yeah, it would have to be pretty good proof.
How do you give proof of an incoherent concept?
I can give you pretty good proof, absolute scientific proof, in about 1 minute. Should we give it a try?
Sure.
Every building is proof of a builder. Every painting is scientific proof of a painter. We know that because a building cannot build itself, it's impossible, and a painting cannot paint itself. Builder could have died 100 years ago, but you know there was a builder because the building's there. Painter could have died 300 years ago, but you know there was a painter because paintings don't paint themselves. Creation is evidence of a creator. Flowers and birds and trees, the sun, the moon, the stars, puppies and kittens, male and female, the seasons, the fruits, all these things are evidence of the genius of God's creative hand.
How so? I agree that a creation is proof of a creator, but calling something a creation already begs the question in favor of a creator. The burden that Ray hasn't met is the burden of proving that nature is, in fact, a creation. How does one prove that scientifically?
An atheist believes the scientific impossibility that nothing created everything.
No, I don't believe that everything, if by that you mean the universe per se, was created at all. Since there was never a time when the universe did not exist in the 13.7 billion years that time has existed, then the universe has, in that sense, always existed. Why would something which has always existed need a creator?
That's your alternative. That's where you fall back to. If you believe there was no creator, then everything was created by nothing, not from nothing, but by nothing, and that's scientifically impossible.
No, I don't believe that the universe needed to be created at all.
Nothing cannot create anything because it's nothing.
I agree. I go a bit further, though. Not only is it impossible for nothing to create anything, I also believe that it is impossible for something or someone to create anything out of nothing. Ray, however, believes that someone can create something out of nothing.
That's why the Bible says the fool has said in his heart there's no God. Let me ask you another question. Sorry.
Who created God?
You know, there are certain things in life that are very sure, and that is when an atheist gets proof of God's existence, they default to that question, who created God?
The reason we ask that question is to illustrate the fact that apologists are employing special pleading. They arbitrarily designate God as the one thing that is not a creation and not in need of a creator.
Here's the answer. God is without the dimension of time. We are in time, we have to wait for time to pass, but God dwells in eternity, and that's where you're going to go when you die.
I'm very curious as to what Ray thinks eternity means. My understanding of that word is that it refers to infinite time, not no time. I don't understand how eternity means being without the dimension of time. My understanding of eternity is that it is the opposite of that. I've always understood the meaning of the word eternal to mean that something occupies all of time, not that it is without the dimension of time. To be without the dimension of time means to not be at all. If a thing's existence doesn't have extension or even location in time, then I don't understand how that is any different from saying that it does not exist.
So here's a question for you, Vanessa. Is your life pleasing to God, or are you doing things that are morally frowned upon by Him?
Probably say I would do things that are morally frowned upon him.
You see, that's why we deny God's existence, because it makes us feel uncomfortable that God sees us.
If I were uncomfortable about God seeing me, how would denying his existence make me feel any better? If a peeper comes looking through my window, simply denying his existence is not going to make me feel any better about it. And if it's the case that I'm uncomfortable with God seeing me, then why would I want to go to heaven? I often hear that to go to heaven means to be with God. If I don't want God to constantly see me, why would I want to be with him for eternity?
Do you know that God knows how many hairs are on your head? Did you know that? Every single one is known by God. In fact, He knows intimately the middle atom that makes up your eyeball.
Well, making an eyeball wouldn't tell you which atom is the middle one because that would be constantly changing. It certainly wouldn't be the same from the point your eyeball developed to even a few seconds later.
Because he made it. He gave you your brain, your blood, your skin.
Why did he give us brains? If our thinking and feeling is all done in our souls, which seems to be the Christian view, then what functions do brains even have?
Everything about you was given to you by God. He gave you the ability to enjoy good music, hearing, the ability to enjoy the blueness of the sky, eyesight, the ability to think. That's your brain.
So when our souls leave our bodies upon death and we no longer have brains, does that mean we can no longer think? If we can still think without brains, what's the point of having them in the first place?
Do you think you're a good person?
I try to be.
Okay. This is a deliberate swing from her intellect to her conscience, because my agenda is not to convince her that God exists. She already knows that.
The title of this video is How to Easily Prove God to an Atheist. What's the point of proving God if your goal is not to convince someone that there's a God?
God's given light to every single person. My agenda is to show her her need of God's forgiveness. I want to share the gospel with her because that's the power of God to salvation.
Salvation from what? If it's true that she is denying the existence of God because the idea of God's presence makes her uncomfortable, then why would she want to go to heaven, which is typically what is meant by salvation?
That's the way she can find everlasting life. And for the gospel to make sense, I've got to take her through the commandments.
Why would she need to be saved to have everlasting life? If everlasting life really means existing forever in the afterlife, then she'll have that even if she goes to hell. The reason the Gospels say that following Jesus results in everlasting life is because the earliest Christians believed not in an afterlife in heaven or hell, but rather that if you're judged to be a good person on Judgment Day, you will literally live forever on earth rather than in some non-corporeal afterlife. If having everlasting life referred to living forever in the afterlife, then you don't need to accept Jesus to have that because you'll exist forever in the afterlife whether you get saved or not.
It is the bow of the moral law that gives the arrow of the gospel its thrust. Okay. I'm going to put it to the test. Can you be honest with me?
Yeah.
How many lies have you told in your life?
Probably a lot. I couldn't count.
So what do you call someone who tells lies?
Well, if they no longer tell lies, they're a former liar.
A liar.
So what are you?
A liar.
Well, whether she's currently a liar depends on whether she still tells lies, doesn't it?
You still think you're a good person?
Yes.
Have you ever stolen something in your whole life, even if it's small, irrespective of its value?
Yes. I have.
What do you call someone who steals?
A thief.
Again, that depends on whether she still steals. Maybe she's a thief, but maybe she's only a former thief.
So what are you?
A thief.
No, you're not. You're a lying thief. Have you ever used God's name in vain?
Probably.
It's not entirely clear what this one even means. The context in the Bible that talks about this seems to refer to using God's name, whatever that even is, in a vain oath. In other words, it means making a promise in God's name and not fulfilling that promise. Another interpretation I've seen is that taking God's name in vain means professing that you believe in God but not obeying his commandments. By these interpretations, even I haven't done this.
Do you love your mum?
Yes.
Would you ever use her name as a cuss word?
No.
Why not?
The idea that using God's name, by which I suspect Ray means Jesus' name, as a cuss word is using his name in vain is a novel interpretation of what that commandment meant. Certainly the person who wrote that commandment did not have in mind people who said things like, Jesus Christ, look at this mess.
You respect her and you love her. But you've taken the name of the God that gave you a mother and gave you life and used it as a cuss word. Very serious. It's called blasphemy. Okay, going personal, Jesus said if you look with lust, sexual desire at a guy, you commit adultery in your heart. Have you ever done that?
Actually, nowhere in the Bible does it say that a woman looking at a guy with lust in her heart has committed adultery.
Yes.
So here's a summation. This is for you to judge yourself. I'm not judging you. But Vanessa, you told me you're a lying thief, a blasphemer, and an adulterer at heart. You have to face God on Judgment Day. If he judges you by those commandments, the 10 commandments, you're going to be innocent or guilty.
Guilty.
Heaven or hell.
Well, if Ray is right that she only denies God's existence because she is uncomfortable about the fact that he can see her, then she should hope for hell, where, some apologists tell us, we are separated from God. The fact that going there is achieved by things like looking at people with lust in our hearts is an added bonus.
Hell. According to God.
Yeah. Do you believe in God?
No.
So you're an atheist?
Yes.
breaks my heart. That horrifies me.
Why? If the reason she denies God is because she is uncomfortable with the idea of him seeing and knowing everything about her, then why would it break your heart for her to go to a place that is supposedly separate from God?
I don't want you to end up in hell. Do you know what death is according to the Bible?
No.
It's wages. Did you know that? The Bible says the wages of sin is death. In other words, God is paying you in death for your sin.
So does she exist forever in hell, or does she die? Which is it? If the Bible makes the self-contradictory claim that death means existing forever, aka the exact opposite of death, even in hell, then that's another reason not to believe in it.
Even people who don't sin die.
Can you think of anyone who hasn't sinned?
Well, if Christianity is true, then Jesus never sinned. I'm pretty sure he still died. In fact, dying is one of the things he is most famous for doing. The more I hear Christian apologists talk about death, the less I understand what it is exactly they're referring to. To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.